All right, we're ready to begin. I'd like to welcome everybody to the January meeting of the Special Elections Committee. We have a quorum. We're not missing anybody. I'm going to skip over the minutes. I seem to have senior moment and didn't get the November minutes to Karen, so we will approve those in February. Okay. So our next item is the recall wrap-up. After we helped with the voting, I was wondering, I have a couple suggestions for the March voting. I was wondering if any other members had some suggestions that we could use. Anything?
I probably have the same as you. I think that we should put a table outside the door and that whoever is checking the IDs, that they do that outside the door, and then we have someone positioned inside the door that opens it when we have availability for them to be checked in at the next station. Probably the same thing you were going to say.
Because what I was concerned, and several members of the committee mentioned this who are helping out with the voting, when you come in that door and you're standing there waiting for, you've already checked in at the door and you've gone over to the table, the desk to get, logged in, and you're ready to vote. When you're standing in the back, you can watch how someone's voting. And that bothered some of the people who were doing the voting, even though I don't know how far people can see, but standing away, it shouldn't be that close to the screen, but it's something to consider, and that's a good suggestion. I thought of that depending on the weather. March is... Yeah, we might need the tent, that's it. So that was one thing. The other thing is people came in at 5 of 3, or was it 2? Whatever, yeah. And by the time they got their ID checked, they checked in at the desk and sat down to vote, the machine shut them off. So they couldn't cast their ballots. They kept saying, well, my watch says, or my phone says, different time. So I think if it gets to be about 5 minutes before, are we allowed to turn people away?
You would have to let me know what your preference is, and I can work with the vendor on that.
Okay. Yeah, because we had several people who were right in the middle of voting when it went down.
Yeah, we give him a hard stop on that. If you want that to change, I just need to know what your preference is.
Okay. We'll discuss it at our February meeting. So on our election candidate training, I think Luann did a wonderful job. And I hope the candidates who are in here got all the information they needed. And if we have any suggestions for the next training, I think following the same format is pretty good. And then everybody left after the training to get their pictures taken. Thank you all for taking my advice. You all smiled. So, but I didn't see much of a smile. And then you all showed up to get your videos, and nobody looked like they were deer in the headlights. So we thank you for that. So if we don't have any suggestions or changes for the training, we have 2 representatives of KSCW radio here. we have John Christensen and Ron Caprioni. Okay, and, pardon? Thank you. I took Italian. So John, you want to get up to the podium?
Thanks for inviting us. We're always happy to help the rec center and the chartered clubs and the organizations in town with announcements and promotions and stuff like that. So we're certainly something that we do with no question. So we're certainly happy to talk about what we can do besides the basics, which would be announcements and getting the information out, And I understand that there's multiple things going on, so it's not one singular announcement and stuff, but happy to hear your ideas and or I could chat a little bit about some of the thoughts we had. Either way, it's a discussion and we partner with you guys.
That sounds great, because I think it's important, especially for some of the deadlines for the community, to make sure they're registered to vote online. And also, they know when the forums are, so they can come to the forums or watch it on YouTube. And also to, my phone's ringing. The other is, when it gets closer to the voting, to make sure people know we're not just voting on board candidates, we're also voting on a statewide initiative that our lovely legislature passed, and we have to either approve or disapprove. So that's going to bring out a lot of people, and we want to make sure that we get a good turnout for that too.
Sounds good, yes. I
right.
agree with what you said, and whether we're working directly with Katie or to some degree with the committee or both, it all works for us. A few comments, just by the way, all the social media availability that the rec center has, including the rec center news and everything, all those things are things that people can access whenever they choose. I could watch the YouTube, I could pick up the rec center news, I could go to the website, whereas the radio, it's just going to come at you. So that's just the difference. Not saying it's necessarily good or bad, it's just, when we figure out if we're doing something besides announcements, which would just happen throughout the day, every day, if we're doing something specific that would be more than an announcement, we've decided that it would fit well in a time slot that we presently do the rec center show on. Usually Bill Schwinn is the person being interviewed, and whoever his guests are, Ron is the host of that show. So if we were wanting to do something that was 15-ish, 20-some minutes, that would be the time slot that we think would be most appropriate.
And we can schedule that pretty much close to the election time or the specific events that you've been talking about, so, to make sure that it gets out there with enough days for people to get the information. So
yeah, as a
we
reminder.
can work with you on that.
Yeah, as far as announcements are concerned, it would basically be what works as far as from a listener's standpoint. Like, there's a lot of details involved in how to sign up and make sure you're registered to vote, all those things. We would typically kind of try to guide people or tell people where to go to get the information. Certainly, we're not limited necessarily by 30 seconds or whatever. So we could do just about anything. And like I said, regular announcements that are relatively short would just be broadcast throughout the day. They would just come up.
Helpful if they would start announcing the last day that you can be registered to be a voter. I think people need to know that in advance so they don't come up short at the last minute, especially if they are not here physically, but they want to vote online.
Yeah.
We
So
can
that
certainly
they have-
accommodate that, yes.
What's that?
We can certainly accommodate that, to get that on, because that's a good point.
Thank you.
So as far as like the exact wording and stuff, if it's that particular that you want something to be exact, you know, we could work on that through Katie. And if, you know, sometimes people send things to us that are longer or, you know, more for the eye or for the print, and we change it a little bit more for the ear, but it all depends on if there's flexibility on that. But basically, we just want to make it work. And as far as like the forum is March 6th and the meet and greet's the 13th. If you figure we want to get maybe 2 weeks of announcements about those two events together, I mean, even though they're roughly close to each other, we'd probably want to start our announcements about that probably February 13th about, which means we need the information before that so we could announce it and get it programmed. So the bottom line is far enough in advance with information so we could get it all figured out.
Anybody have any questions for our guests?
Roberta, I just want to clarify, you don't need to register to vote, you just need to register by that deadline to vote online. So if you want to show up in the DRC and you're a known member in good standing, there's no registration per se. And then if you want to take any language off of the timeline, as far as 30-second snippets, that might be the easiest thing to do because those kind of flow as the timeline flows.
Okay.
Just out of curiosity, I think we should ask the audience if they have any thoughts or ideas on what they would like to know about the election that might be worthwhile having on the radio.
And can we have your name and rec card number, please?
You may. Kathy Estes, 131671. I think it's just really important to get over and over and over again how important it is to vote on the referendum so we can really drive turnout. I think it's really important that we get that. I know there has to be a quorum that votes. What is that quorum? Is that 1,000 people? Okay. So that shouldn't be an issue, I wouldn't think, but you never know. So that would be my suggestion.
Your referendum in terms of the parking,
Yes.
Maricopa County, we have been on a pretty much a weekly basis on the Rec Center show. We've been discussing that and getting information out. So that has been on the air for at least the last 2 weeks, two shows.
And certainly we could do announcements on that too. It is a separate thing that just happens to be voted on at the same time.
And Pora did put out a e-newsletter blast on that as well. We've gotten at least 100 new registrations on that through all the different announcements. So it's out there pretty good.
And what time is the Rec Center show, day and time?
The Rec Center show airs on Tuesday morning from 8 to about 8:15. And also the same show is rebroadcast on Thursday at 4 o'clock. The show is not live. We record it typically on Monday morning, so it plays on Tuesday for the first time, and it is on our website for the week, so it is something that people could listen to whenever they choose if they go to our website for that particular show.
Any other questions for our guests? Thank you very much.
You're
We'll be in
welcome.
touch.
We will.
as we have just discussed, we have some important deadlines. And Wednesday, March 13th at 3 p.m. is the deadline to register to vote online. Now, if you have voted previously online, you don't need to re-register, but you should be contacting member services, and they have a particular website or email address to register yourself, and that is vote, the @ suncitywest.com. And that'll allow you to register to vote, and then everything will, otherwise, the only other option really is to come up to the resource center and vote. We do take care of Homebound. I know during the recall, we had 6 people. They were, all but one were in their 90s, and they don't drive anymore, and they don't use a computer. So Karen took their information, and I would go over there, and so they could vote on paper, and those ballots were put in on election day. We don't really have absentee ballots, because if you're anywhere near a computer, you can vote. You don't have to be sitting here at a Sun City West address to vote, as long as you can get on the internet and to the voting site. So on Monday, March 18th, the online voting begins. And then on Thursday, March 21st, that's when online voting ends at 3 p.m. After that, your only other option is to come up on the 25th and vote at the resource center. We had a good turnout for the recall. We had over 500 people voting at the resource center. And I think it went fairly smooth. Got people in quickly as possible. We did have a couple times where it bunched up, but otherwise I think it went pretty well. So important election dates. On March 6th will be the candidate forum. And our February meeting is going to be closed because we will be working on the questions to ask the candidates. There won't be a lot of time for questions because we got 8 candidates and they all get an introductory time to make a statement. So it's going to limit the amount of time that we have to ask questions. Also on that day, audience questions will be handed in. We'll get rid of those that are duplicate topics and so forth, and those will be asked of the candidates as well. But again, we're going to have limited time since there are 8 candidates. We're working through this. So on the March 13th, which is a Wednesday, at 6:30 at night, we have a candidate meet and greet, and this will be the community's chance to meet you in person and talk to you and get information about you. I think, as I said to Martin earlier, and Katie, the website's great. It's got great pictures of all the candidates. We have their link to their videos and link to their bios. So there's plenty of information out there by all the candidates. And it's on the Sun City West website under members. So voting begins at 10 a.m. on Monday, March 25th, and ends at 3 p.m. Like I said, we need to figure out probably have people stop coming in about 5 minutes before, because like I said, last time we had several people right in the middle of voting that, because they came in like a minute before and the system shuts down at 3. Yes.
Like if someone gets to the resource center by 3 o'clock, if they're there at 2:59, they should be allowed to vote. Is there not a way we can handle that?
Katie would know.
Yeah, we can just formally close the ballot at 3:05 or 3:10, and that'll accommodate them, and it'll just be a little slower to get the results, but it'll accommodate everybody. And if you don't have anybody, we'll just wait.
Once they get to the resource center, they have to we check their rec card, and then they go over to a desk where the database is, and they get checked in there, and then they get to vote. So that takes several minutes.
But I do feel like if they are there physically before 3 o'clock, they should have the option to vote. I just
Okay.
think in fairness to the people who are running. Ideally, they'll time themselves to be there before 2:59.
Right. So one thing we want to make sure that only owner members in good standing may vote. Tenants and associates may not vote. And each owner member has to have their own email address on file. That's where we have you register. And owners with more than one property, they only vote once. And we have a special set of computers set up for those people. And Katie handles that.
Roberta, if I can just add a couple other things. So
Sure.
even though it says voting starts at 8 a.m., we have almost 20,000 emails going out. So the vendor's sending them all out. So he spaces them out so they don't get marked as spam. So you may not get your ballot right at 8 a.m. They go out through the course of that day. So don't panic if you don't get it right away. Check your junk or spam email box. You will get it that day. If you don't get it towards later in the day or mid-afternoon, then you can email us at vote@suncitywest.com, and we'll figure out if your ballot didn't come through. But again, don't panic if you don't get it right at 8 a.m. When you do, again, check your spam and your junk if you don't see it. When you do get it, if you don't want to use the internet, whatever reason, those emailed ballots do have a phone number in there and a special code. So you are welcome to call that 1-800 number, give them your code, and you can vote by phone. So we did have about a dozen people vote by phone last year. Yeah, that's it.
Katie, I think that's a wonderful example for an announcement from the radio. I have one other comment. I'm going to say it, and I'll probably get shot down on it, and don't hate me, Katie. But is there any way that we could extend the candidate forum by 30 minutes? I think the questions are so important. And instead of ending at 11, I know, you have your schedules for the room and the advertisement, but I think it would be so helpful to have an extra 30 minutes.
Yeah, that's really for Roberta and Karen to work out. So whatever you guys decide, I can change the PR on my end.
Currently, it's from 9 to 11. And I mean, the introductory speeches alone will be, 48 minutes or longer? So, and we don't want to deny our candidates these wonderful questions.
Is there any way we could start at 8:30?
You mean get up that early?
Yeah, get with Karen in scheduling, and again, outside my realm, but I don't see any reason why not if the room's available. Just let me know how you want me to adjust the PR and the website.
When does it have to be in the newspaper? What's the deadline for getting it in the Rec Center News?
Well, you've got the Rec Center News in front of you, so we'd have to change it. But if you're changing the ending time, it probably doesn't matter. I mean, people just stay longer and you notify them. If you're changing the beginning time, it's a problem. So I don't think it's a problem if you're just keeping them there longer.
Well, I don't think then we'll change the beginning time, but we might end up going a half hour more.
Oh, and one other thing, on election day with the digital ballots, or if you're voting early, don't forget the 8 candidates, the order that they appear will rotate. So every time you open that ballot, they will be in different order per the vendor or per our selection with the vendor. So it's so that nobody has an advantage. If you're one of those folks that do Homebound, it's a static printed ballot. Obviously, it's in alphabetical order. It doesn't change. But the digital ballot, if you close it and come back to it, it'll be in a different order. So keep that in mind.
Anything else? Then I'll take any committee member comments. Any of our guests have comments? Please put your name and your rec card number.
Yes, good morning. Name is Rudy Grum, and I am a candidate. My number is 135018. And the question only is, I believe Katie said that on election day, about 20,000 emails will be sent out for people to vote online.
Not on election day, but when early voting starts
Or
on
when-
the 13th,
Okay,
or
then-
the 18th.
That would mean you have 20,000 people registered to vote.
That's how many emails we have on file.
Okay. What happens to the other 8,000 or so residents that aren't registered with emails to vote?
They can come into the DRC and vote on election day.
But how are they given any notice?
So through the Rec Center News, through
Okay.
the e-news, we try to get them
I
if
understand.
we
So
can get there.
so they don't, so since they're not registered, they're not getting the email for early voting, but it's then incumbent upon them to be reading the e-news or other.
Yeah,
vendors.
registration simply means that we have an email address on file for them. It's nothing more than that.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
And don't forget, we have a lot of people here who are renters and associate members, so they wouldn't be voting anyway. Any other audience comments? Yes, Martin?
You want questions from online?
Yes.
So our first one is from Mystical Michelle, and she was asking to do introductions around the table. So I'm assuming you guys.
Okay. Merle, you want to start?
My name is Merle Schwepke. My name is Sana Sterling.
Roberta Davidson?
Luann Kent?
Marshall Adams.
Katie O'Grady, I'm not on the committee, just an advisor.
And we have 2 more. Next one is from someone named Teamster. You need to allow whatever time is needed for candidates to respond to questions at the forum. It's frustrating that residents' questions/inputs are always so limited.
We'll take that under advisement. Thank you.
And then there's one more from the same person. Anyone who gets to the research center by 3 p.m. should be allowed to vote however long it takes without shutting anything down.
Again, we'll take that under advisement. Anything further? Then I will adjourn the meeting.